The following video was originally written as an article for Stinger magazine for all things action games. To celebrate the 30th anniversary of this beloved franchise, please enjoy this article in video form. Obuge is a term used to describe games that focus on the player memorizing the patterns of his enemies to continue through the game, loosely translating to remember the game. The original Ninja Gaiden on the Nintendo Entertainment System from 1988 was one such game, filled with unexpected traps and combinations of foes that had to be circumvented to reach the end goal. The larger-than-life boss fights were equally pattern-based, each with distinct moves that could be predicted and responded to perfectly if the player was sagely enough at the game's mechanics. In 1999, following his rise to fame after the successful Dead or Alive 2, Tomonobu Itagaki was ordered by his commander-in-chiefs at Tecmo to start production on an action game. Itagaki has often remarked that his philosophy of game design centers around player interactivity, with their actions quickly being reacted to by the game. Reflex-based gameplay is his niche. Dead or Alive 2 used a counter system, which allowed players to negate enemy attacks if they became too predictable, or if their reactions were fast enough. An almost mixture of the Obuge style of gameplay and his own reactive philosophy. It is no surprise then that once we delve into Itagaki's history, we found out he was mentored by Yoshiaki Inose, who programmed the original Ninja Gaiden back in 1988. Dead or Alive 2 is a child of Itagaki's nature and nurture, his own personality, and the training he had received in his craft. While designing the action title Tecmo had requested of him, the marketing department issued the order to link the title to that of the original Ninja Gaiden to up sales, mostly due to its fame worldwide as a strong action title. It was with this that Ninja Gaiden started development for the PlayStation 2, though from a user poll, the fans in anticipation for the game highly requested it to be a GameCube exclusive. Ironically, the game ended up on neither platform, instead being released on the Xbox due to Itagaki himself, with his engineering and programming background, being impressed by its hardware. This decision was not known to both the executives of Tecmo or the public, shocking both consumers and management when the trailer at E3 2002 revealed the Xbox exclusivity. When launched in 2004, the game starred protagonist Ryu Hayabusa from Dead or Alive and Ninja Gaiden fame. Itagaki took great care not to reboot the existing source material, but instead chose to set the title before the original games and the first Dead or Alive title, not wanting to disrespect the original's foundation, but complement it. Ryu featured two designs used throughout the first time playing, starting with a purple shinobi outfit with little detailing, focusing more on the classical ninja look, while also referencing Ryu's blue design from the 1988 title. The outfit is simplistic, but does what it needs to. You are a ninja, and one of many. You are not special. The latter design, which the player uses throughout the rest of the game, sports kunai and straps with a menacing silver falcon present on Ryu's forehead. This design lets Ryu feel more special and like a true master ninja. In his hands, he wields the Dragon Sword, a legendary katana. With the blade in hand, Ryu's two main features are his skills with any weapon and his trademark agility. His combat style consists of 3 buttons: light, heavy, and ranged attacks. Outside of that, he can hop on enemies, jump off walls, run on walls, and backflip out of harm's way, not to mention all the other advanced techniques available to the player. While he gains more options later on throughout the game, such as multiple weapons and new abilities, like the counterattack and guillotine throw, the core remains the same. At the beginning of the game, we see Ryu jumping down from a tree to cut down an unsuspecting ninja. Control is then immediately given to the player, whose first foe appears soon after. Later on, players will realize that the threat of this foe is low, but for a new player he can be tricky. Their attacks are relentless, and the player could very well die or come out of the battle with scars both on his body and in the mind. Once defeated, the player can press the attack button to kick the dead body to the side. In the frame that the kick connects, the screen flashes white and a strong sound is emitted from your speakers, really selling you on Ryu's power. It is this very beginning which immediately showcases the direction this title will go towards. One must fight for and earn the right to be a ninja, and master the moves of himself and his enemies. But he must also react. Enemies have an unpredictable nature and will dodge and jump around frantically in an attempt to disorient the player. Itagaki's brand of game design. The first chapter continues by throwing more ninjas at the player, who has little combat options at his disposal at the time. In an attempt to school the player, the first chapter is among the harder ones with the least tools available, forcing the player to fall back on Ryu's agility, cementing the role it will play throughout the game. The level itself looks and feels like a ninja school. It is fitting then that at the end of the chapter lies the first and only exam, Murai. Placed in a wide open dojo, Murai exhibits the same approach as the player. He has his guard up and punishes mistakes with counters, grabs, and attacks of his own. Once in danger of being hurt, he will backflip to safety. He is designed in a way to allow players to learn the game from him, not to learn how to beat him specifically. Akin to playing Dead or Alive 2 against a superior player, one will learn concepts of offense and defense by him crushing you over and over until you finally win one round yourself. Murai wields nunchaku, not a katana, probably to emphasize the feeling of embarrassment losing with your blade to a wielder of two sticks, and also to give the player the promise that he won't be facing or using just the katana. During the fight, Murai truly expresses the mixture in Itagaki's nature and nurture of game design. The boss has a small selection of attacks and distinct patterns the player can memorize, but he will also randomly block or dodge attacks to give a fight a more reactive feel. Here the game fully embraces a style of game design which we will from now on call Watashi wa ge, meaning I am the game. The player must become the game, his mind and body completely dedicated to the experience before them, allowing Ryu and the player to become one entity. Once Murai lies defeated using just his wits, knowledge of the game, reactions, and usage of Ryu's agility, the player is one step closer to the road of becoming a master ninja. This feeling of learning and slowly becoming the ninja was at the center of Itagaki's mind when designing this game. This resulted in players in the community, to this day, referring to each other as Ninja no Totu, or Ninja Brother, urging each other to always ascend to the next level of play for that impossible benchmark of becoming a true ninja. With the game now opened up, we can look at the combat mechanics behind it in more detail. When analyzed, Ryu sports two main attacks that can be used together to create a combination of attacks, akin to a Dead or Alive game. The list of moves may seem small by today's standards, but each and every move offers a distinct use. There's an uppercut, a few vertical and horizontal slices, and a few kicks and slides that deal less damage but stagger foes more. What stands out is that once pressed, the action cannot be immediately cancelled, forcing the player to think before he presses. This methodology of thinking before one acts is complemented by the enemies on offer. Foes are fast and will attack together if need be, really putting the pressure on the player. With all the information on screen, Itagaki's gameplay design puts the player in a hard spot. From enemy movements to sound effects telegraphing their next attack, it can be scary to let go of the block button and dedicate to a move. But once done, and the opening is used to finish off a foe, the feeling is beyond description. Once a player is more settled, he can try out the ultimate technique. When killed, enemies drop a small orb called Essence, which, when the heavy attack button is held down, is absorbed by Ryu to unleash a devastating flurry of blows, throughout which Ryu is fully invincible. The fact that an Essence is required to activate the move, and that it cannot be manually charged, means that the player needs to have killed at least one enemy first, making it less a crutch to lean upon than most invincible moves in the genre. Aside from being used in this move, Essence can also be used to upgrade and buy weapons and items at shops. To balance this, enemies killed by the ultimate technique will drop a strong Essence, which is worth a lot more money. But Essence absorbed to fuel the technique barely give any at all. This element adds a nice gamble to the system, making each usage of the ability a thought process. Do I use the Essence for my ultimate technique? Will it kill them? Do I have enough money to upgrade my katana? This decision is made even harder with the knowledge that enemies killed using an ultimate technique only drop the yellow money essence, and thus not the blue health orbs, which could also influence the decision of a player thirsting for a heal. And even if such a blue orb floats around, you can still absorb it for a more powerful ultimate technique. All these thoughts racing through the player's head while enemies are dancing around him, waiting for him to let his guard down. This whole system is a neat twist on the economic side of the game, and is something the player has to keep in mind at all times. In a strange twist though, if you are already at full health, absorbing the blue orb normally does nothing. It would have been a good addition to make these count as a lot of money, rewarding the player for not taking damage with some nice extra cash. This was done in Devil May Cry, but it was never embraced by this series. Perhaps Itagaki did not wish for players to focus on their economy too much, as also evident by the low cap on the maximum amount of essence a player can carry, which is easily reached. All in all though, it is a brilliant design for a super move. It is strange then that the move has been retweaked and reworked throughout every remake and sequel to date, but never reached this level of balance again. If we unscrew the lid on Ninja Gaiden further, we find that Ryu doesn't necessarily get any stronger throughout the game, not by design anyway. While he will gain new abilities and weapons, his damage output remains nearly the same, and enemies rarely get more health, but instead they become more aggressive or gain new moves as the game progresses. Instead of balancing the game around Ryu, it is focused on the true ninja at play here, you. The designer's thought process throughout Ninja Gaiden's 14 chapters is that the player will learn from his mistakes, recognize patterns, and will adapt to new and unforeseen problems on the fly. This is why new enemies are often reiterations of previously fought and mastered foes, offering the player some knowledge as a base, while also offering new threats via new moves or mechanics. Regular ninjas become Black Spider Clan ninjas, and imps are slowly replaced by their bigger brethren, the Arioks. This form of game balancing relies heavily on the player and can get very risky, leading to either a game that stays equally difficult from start to finish, one that gets easier, or a game that gets impossibly difficult for the player near the end, depending on the player himself, his persona, and how he expresses it in the game. And express it he shall, with two types of katana, a giant wooden sword, an axe, an nunchaku, a fictional weapon named the Vigorian flail, and a giant wooden oar called the Unlabored Flawlessness. There are plenty of ways to show the world who the true Master Ninja is. Itagaki has often remarked that he disliked the fact that most players use the Dragon Sword throughout the game, and it is not hard to see why. Other weapons either focus on power or speed, while this weapon has both and is one of the 3 weapons capable of performing the powerful Izuna drop attack. While it is recommended to use certain weapons in certain conditions, switching weapons is done via a menu, which slows down the combat immensely. As a result, players are more likely to stick to a balanced, all-purpose weapon throughout the experience, in this case, the Dragon Sword. The further the player advances throughout the story and the more weaponry he possesses, the player will slowly master the knowledge and find the perfect counters and punishes for his foes. While rewarding, this can also make the combat somewhat monotonous and repetitive, as each fight will consist of the player dodging and blocking until that one opening presents itself to be punished with that one move over and over again. A minor blemish, but a blemish. It is no surprise though that, despite its minor blemishes, difficulty, and punishing mechanics, the game was a success. The style of design, born of Itagaki himself, was a hit and got players addicted, selling nearly 400,000 copies in its first month. An unimpressive number by today's standards, but very impressive for that time frame. The original 2004 version of Ninja Gaiden is a game that started a lot of trends and set the bar for the genre and future titles to come. But Itagaki and his team, often forgotten but always at his side, were not done. For an artist, a piece of art is never finished. But it also takes a good artist to know when a piece must be laid to rest, so the artist may move on. In the eyes of those lovers of perfection, a work is never finished. A word that for them has no sense but abandoned. And in this abandonment, whether to the flames or to the public, and which is the result of wariness or an obligation to deliver, is a kind of an accident to them, like the breaking off of a reflection which fatigue, irritation, or something similar has made worthless. Paul Valery. Artists across every form have struggled with ceasing production and letting their product see the light of day. But a good artist knows that its piece will live a life of its own and grow. Though a bit of a cliché example, the Statue of Liberty is a great one. It's a statue whose green color has become a staple of its design, even though it was originally gray, having turned green by oxidation. Art evolves, even if it remains untouched. In other cases, artists come back to their work, retouching a once published piece. This can lead to conflicting visions, one of the past and one of the present, as infamously done with the Star Wars movies. During game development, there comes a time when the deadline is reached and the game is sent out to be mass-produced. During this time, the team that made the game is essentially available to produce newer and better art, but it is likely they are still in the zone of their previous project, with tons of ideas floating in their heads. In the current day and age, development is planned around this, as much downloadable content is made in that time slot. But Ninja Gaiden was created at the start of the online age for consoles, where DLC wasn't even popular enough to deserve its acronym. Still bursting with ideas, Itagaki and his team set out to, in their eyes, complete Ninja Gaiden. Not for the buyer, but to satisfy their own artistic desire. The name of the project? Hurricane Packs. We are creating the Hurricane Packs for ourselves rather than for our fans. Our goal is to become the #1 in the action game category as well as the fighting game genre. The Hurricane Pack is an experiment based on that goal, as said by Tomonobu Itagaki. Content-wise, the Hurricane Packs are divided among 2 downloads, each with their own goal. The first aims to perfect the original game by changing and updating certain elements. The second offers a separate, more contained experience to challenge the best players out there. Let's start with the original Hurricane Pack, released at August 2004, only 5 months after the original game's launch. It is accessible from a separate menu to not replace the game, but complement it. This does make the menus a bit more complex, but does preserve the original game. Practice future games tend to ignore by having patches and DLC replace existing content. Hurricane Pack 1 begins as you would expect, with Ryu jumping down to cut down an unsuspecting ninja, before beginning his ascension throughout Mirai's now familiar dojo. But it is also immediately different, as fights contain new ninja-type enemies paired with more late-game foes. Once familiar areas feel dangerous again, as the player does not know what they can expect. Other completely new enemies are added later on as well, and move lists of existing ones are expanded. Most of the new enemies are demonic in nature though, not human. Itagaki has stated that he found human foes to be boring to design, and rather wanted to focus on the supernatural. This does slowly turn the game away from its roots as a ninja game, with ninja-like foes falling more and more into the background, making the game less ninja versus ninja, but more man against beast. It isn't shortly after that the player gets his hands on the Lunar Staff. This new weapon is a long red pole with little gold edgings. It's simplistic in its design, elegant, and makes a loud knocking sound when it connects with enemy bones. With a fast moveset and strong ultimate technique that covers a wide area, it is the first weapon to have players divert away from the safe Dragon Sword option. Not surprising, as the designers were well aware that the sword was favored by the community. While examining the new weapon's sleek design, it is easy for a hostile ninja to sneak up on you, but this attack is blocked. It is here that you activate, perhaps by accident, the new intercept technique. This move allows Ryu to immediately counter an attack that is blocked just as it connects, a parry. Where dodging was normally the most recommended way to survive, both are now equally important due to intercept's high damage output in addition to the Karma score system. Karma is part of a ranking system. Killing enemies grants the player points, which at the end of the mission lead to the player getting a predetermined rank. These ranks go from Ninja Dog, Lesser Ninja, Head Ninja, Greater Ninja, and end with the rank we all aspire to, Master Ninja. The game, in essence, combines the more arcade-like point systems together with those present in games like Devil May Cry, which offer letter-based grades. Both systems have up and down sides. A regular scoring system means the player can always improve his score, allowing for more replayability and optimization. But by having these scores be visible on the leaderboard, even if you are in the top percentile of players, you will probably be around 10,000th place. A strong achievement, but one that can also be very demoralizing. A letter, or in this case a title-based system, has a clear goal for the player to reach, Master Ninja rank. But once obtained, one cannot go higher. Seeing both these systems combined is a unique twist, especially since this happened so early in the genre's age. While playing for score, a player will quickly notice that doing ultimate techniques, which can now be charged manually without essence, yields the most points. Paired with the intercept technique, this turns a Karma run more into a puzzle of how to kill each enemy and every foe with an ultimate technique as reliably as possible. While definitely interesting, Itagaki does push players towards one single mechanic too much, negating nearly every other option the game has on offer. In each and every situation, the ultimate technique is the best move to use, a balance issue that has yet to be resolved within the series since. The second Hurricane Pack launched 1 month later in September of 2004. This expansion featured a tower for the player to climb, while slowly gaining upgrades as he went up higher and higher until he reached the final segment and won. The pack barely contains any new content, as most assets were reused. One new addition being 2 new bosses, with one being a redesign of the existing Alma boss fight, with some tweaks to her AI to make her handled differently. But this setup presented a more quick and streamlined Ninja Gaiden experience. While the entire tower could be completed within an hour or so, it was filled with the hardest the game had to offer. Players had to carefully plan their purchases and upgrades as resources were severely limited. This streamlined experience allowed Itagaki to experiment more freely with the combat scenarios, sometimes even pitting the player against bosses and regular enemies at the same time, a first for the series. But the most important element of the second Hurricane Pack was the Master Ninja Tournament. While hard to believe in the multiplayer landscape of today, single-player tournaments were a thing, starting long ago with Sword Quest on the Atari 2600, which pitted players against each other in a slightly edited build of the game, with a chance to win grand prizes. The Master Ninja Tournament consisted of free online contests taking place over Microsoft's online service, Xbox Live. To compete, players had to upload their Karma scores of the Hurricane Packs with around 3 weeks. The first 2 tournaments functioned as qualifiers for a live Ninja Gaiden Master Tournament World Championship, held on September 25th at the Tokyo Game Show 2004. The Master Ninja Tournament was the final trial for Itagaki to find the real ninja. His distaste for failure was also on full display, with him personally sending the 100 lowest ranking players a t-shirt with the term Ninja Dog written on it. Only the worldwide top 5 were allowed to compete in the finale, resulting in an intense qualifier. It was a dream each and every player could aspire to at home, to end up on that stage and become the best. Once the finals began, the finalists got to play an edited version of the second Hurricane Pack with a 10-minute timer. The one with the most karma at the end won. And with dying resulting in a loss of karma, the stakes were very high. Ninja Gaiden, as mentioned before, is half based on reaction and half based on knowledge. So it was a wise decision to have the tournament take place as fast as possible. This prevented players from getting too familiar with the newly introduced enemies and bosses. If done today, the results would have been very different. Itagaki's pride and joy was front and center as he smiled on stage. Watching the best of the best duke it out against his creations on the big screen could very well have been the highlight of his career. While originally a 5-man showdown, the battle was clearly between the American player Snapdragon and Japanese master Yasunori Otsuka. While Snapdragon finished the tournament faster, Otsuka managed to snag more karma and thus won the tournament. The show came to an end with Itagaki proudly presenting Otsuka with a plaque which read, Worldwide Master Ninja Tournament 2004. The one true ninja. With every battle won comes wisdom. While the tournament was a success and put both the game and its community in the spotlight, there has never been quite something like it again. 2010 saw Sega organize an event in Japan to have a few random players fight for the highest scores in Vanquish's challenge maps, with even producer Atsushi Inaba participating. But other than that, events like this have been extinct. A shame, as they showcase player skill and community building, both strong game sellers, and it keeps the game from being forgotten. Now, with the tournament behind him and Ninja Gaiden in his eyes perfected, the question remained, what was next for Itagaki and his team? While the Hurricane Packs were a very selfish endeavor, his next one would be one for the fans. I know that 90% of the Ninja Gaiden users only enjoy offline gaming. To not disappoint those hardcore fans of Ninja Gaiden, I'd like to think of something for them. When asked about the greats in the genre, fans will often reply with Devil May Cry 3, God of War 2, Bayonetta, God Hand, and perhaps an offbeat title like Chaos Legion or Shinobi. But first and foremost are three words uttered with the utmost care and adoration: Ninja Gaiden Black. Yet in a bizarre twist, when analyzing the interviews Itagaki has done, one will see very little mention of Ninja Gaiden Black itself. While he has often gone on record to discuss the original, the Hurricane Packs, and the latter Ninja Gaiden 2, comments on the favorite son of the franchise are slim. Itagaki was pleased with the Hurricane Packs and how they complemented and expanded upon his original game. In his eyes, the goal of providing the best action game had been met, if only for those who had online capabilities on their Xbox. Itagaki stated that he would make Black to please the offline ninjas operating in the shadows, but it's clear that in his mind, the game was already completed with the Hurricane Packs. Black was merely a formality. It was made for the fans, not out of artistic desire. It is this desire, the rich development history surrounding it, and the merger of Itagaki's nature and nurture, which took center stage in the previous chapters. With that covered, and the game now complete, the combat engine should be fully analyzed. As noted before, Ninja Gaiden uses a 3-button layout for its combat, with light attacks being used the most, with the heavy attack being a singular slow hit that is better used when charged up for an ultimate technique. Finally, there's ranged attacks that serve as a backup. The amount of attack combinations available increase as the weapons are leveled up and new abilities are found. These moves use a combination of button commands supported by directional inputs. Enemies are aggressive in nature, and there is always one attacking or looking for an opening in your defenses. Holding block will have Ryu defend, but certain attacks have block breaking capabilities, and some simply cannot be guarded against at all. Dodging can be done at nearly any given time, rolling Ryu to safety with some invincibility frames in the middle, called the reverse wind. This is where the knowledge part comes in, knowing what attack should be blocked and which should be avoided altogether. In a nice touch, a broken guard can be dodged out of, called the furious wind. Also, though not sure if intended, a broken card can also instantly be reset by letting go of the block button and pressing it again, having Ryu block whole chains of attacks that are guard breakers. Sadly, the interesting but overused and, granted, overpowered intercept technique was removed, with Itagaki finding it too hard to balance properly. When on the defensive, the game will play out with Ryu holding his guard up, dodging when a certain move activates near him, blocking again only to have it broken, but cancelled into a dodge, chained into a jump that leads to a wall run to safety. It's a very active form of defensive play with a plethora of options. The player will never feel like he's standing still, instead he's using Ryu's agility to stay alive. This is all possible because enemies have strong visual and audio cues. Let's take the Bast Fiends, cat-like demons, as example. They have a swipe, a triple swipe, a pounce followed by a swipe, and can confuse you by rapid wall jumping. The swipe is a singular hit which will probably be dodged away from, as it breaks your block. But the triple swipe follows you, so if you dodge away, you'll get hit. The same goes for the pounce, which most players will dodge away from, but if the pounce is followed by a swipe, you'll get hit in your dodge recovery. These moves are feigns for each other, yet they can be avoided as each has a distinct tell, be it an auditory cry or the fiend leaning backwards before he strikes. They can all be predicted and reacted to. Meanwhile, attacks started off-screen can only be of the kind that has an audio cue. In short, there are no excuses for being hit. Due to the enemy aggression, it is often the goal to find an opening using your knowledge of the cues, punish, and then go back on the defensive. That leaves a very small window of opportunity, so the punish needs to be optimal. Slowly throughout their playthroughs, players will find their favorite punishes which deals the most damage and are the safest, and use those exclusively. But this process does slowly force players away from the other commands at their disposal, turning the game into a repetitive affair. Thankfully, the pressure from the opponents, looking for the opening, and striking is satisfying enough to keep the game enjoyable. But the combat could really have benefited from pushing the variation of attacks. This is further evident when going for karma points, which, as discussed before, removes nearly 95% of Ryu's abilities from the equation. To complement his close-range style, Ryu also has some ranged weapons, the most important being the shuriken and the bow. Shurikens can be used at the end of a combo to cancel commands early and stun smaller enemies in a pinch. The bow is used more as a tool to dispatch faraway enemies, or to deal with the more mechanical foes like tanks and helicopters. Lastly, Ryu also has Ninpo at his disposal, a form of magic. Once activated, Ryu becomes fully invincible and casts a corresponding spell, functioning more as a quick button to help a player out if they are in a pinch. The flame wheels cover Ryu in orbs of fire that deal damage and push enemies away. It's a strong get off me move, and good for punishing bosses when they are open. Meanwhile, the Inferno is a singular projectile that deals good damage, Ice Storm generates a small snowstorm dealing minor damage, and lastly there's the Inazuma, which deals good damage to all enemies on screen, especially when fully upgraded. As you might have noticed, balancing is an issue here, and it's surprising that Inazuma didn't get some tweaks as more versions of the game were released. When used properly, it can clean entire rooms of enemies with just one activation, and it makes bosses, who are now supported by additional foes, far less troublesome. Ice Storm, on the other hand, rarely sees any use. The enemies in Ninja Gaiden come in all shapes and sizes, which is the most apparent in their movement. Some foes, like ninjas and Bast Fiends, jump around constantly trying to distract you from their true intentions, while other more stationary foes, like Gala, tank around and attack Ryu if he's close by with strong, hard-hitting attacks. On the other side of the spectrum are the ranged combatants who use guns and rockets to keep Ryu at a distance. These often have a reduced health pool, marking their death in one hit. This makes them good to prioritize, and balances them out as they can be quite annoying when paired with aggressive close combat enemies. Later on, the humanoids take a near permanent back seat though, where most fights are against large, slow enemies which require a strong weapon to quickly defeat. If you were to show a player of a run-through of the last chapter, and compare it to the first, the reactions would be quite different and they might even think they are playing different games entirely. That this happens without the player realizing it does show how well paced the enemy encounters are and how slowly and carefully the transition from man to monster goes. Furthermore, each difficulty setting now remixes the enemy encounters, adds new ones, and sometimes even introduces new enemies not seen on lower settings, while also remixing item locations. This goes double for the bosses, who either gain allies to help them or are replaced by different encounters altogether. This helps keep the game fresh and challenging, rewarding the player's skill at the game and not their memorization, exactly what Itagaki desired. Boss fights operate as milestones for the player to build up towards, especially on repeat playthroughs. Items are saved because you might need them, and money is hoarded because it might help you out if you are stuck. Each boss is designed different, but there is one core element that is present throughout: dodging. Bosses, especially the fiends, have a randomized algorithm that has them dodge your attacks when you try to hit them. While there are a few openings where they simply cannot dodge, this does make the bosses feel very reactive and threatening, no matter the skill level of the player. You'll never know if you'll get a hit in, and if they'll punish you for your aggression. Bosses like Alma are a good example of this. She flies around in an erratic pattern to confuse you, throws projectiles, and tries to grab you. In between, you have to force an opening throughout the madness surrounding you, praying it will hit. You'll jump left and right, climb walls, dodge at the split second, only to have your own attack be dodged. Neither you nor the enemy got hit. It feels like a duel between ninja. A strong sensation. The dodge notwithstanding, most bosses do operate in a familiar fashion. They have a couple of moves you'll need to learn the timing of and how to block or dodge them, find out which are safe to punish, and discover the best attack to punish with. Though the tournament is over, Master Ninja makes its debut as a difficulty level in this game. The concept behind it being that only the best of the best can conquer it. But the game pads its difficulties out carefully, hiding Master Ninja behind normal, hard, and then very hard before becoming accessible. By doing this, the act of starting the difficulty is its own reward, as it shows dedication to the game, having beaten it at least 3 times already. Once started, the enemies faced are immediately the hardest available, and the odds are severely stacked against you. Items are more expensive, and certain key abilities aren't given until much later, having the player rely less on them and more on their own abilities. The enemies and their compositions are considerate, however. You'll never die in one hit, and foes don't take an unreasonable amount of damage before dying either. It never feels unfair, but neatly balanced. Where most games are built around normal difficulty and then scaled up, one couldn't be blamed for thinking Ninja Gaiden Black was built the other way around. The game doesn't hold back, and one really has to embrace the I am the game style of gameplay to survive. This is most apparent during the boss fights when hard or higher summon minions to assist them. While this practice does make the bosses as a character feel weaker, as they need help to beat you, it works from a mechanical point of view to make them more challenging. Without them, bosses are quite simple once the patterns are memorized, an easy feat after beating the game 3 times. By adding foes to them, the challenge remains, but the gained knowledge doesn't become useless. Going back to normal difficulty afterwards to face them one-on-one suddenly shows how empty and easy the bosses have become without their allies to defend them, using your level of experience as a player. Should all the above prove too hard, Black introduces Ninja Dog difficulty mode, which is unlocked if the player dies repeatedly. Ryu will carry a pink ribbon around for the rest of the playthrough, gain unique armbands that give strong buffs, and will also be unable to obtain the Master Ninja rank upon completing a stage, showing Itagaki's disdain for a failed ninja who are unwilling to learn from their mistakes. He even went on record to say, "How could a dog become a Master Ninja?" That said, the mode still doesn't play itself, and the goal of the mode is clearly to give players the ability to become good enough to tackle the rest of the game on higher settings. Now, with the game completed and viewed as a whole, especially with the previous 2 versions of the game as reference, it's easy to see that Black changed a lot compared to its original form from 2004. This chapter started with the mentioned lack of artistic desire, and this shows in the game's vision. The game has slowly moved away from a more methodical ninja adventure to a man versus monster showdown where the trick is finding the best moves and forget the rest. All the little changes made this transition happen without anyone, probably even Itagaki, knowing. Still, even with all that, there are no games in the genre that are this packed with content or this well designed. Every frame of the game is carefully considered. every enemy placed with care, and each move well designed and thought out. If you are standing on a hill and there are two spider ninjas facing you paired with one bast fiend, you know that Itagaki painstakingly planned this encounter out. It is only when viewed from afar that certain details can be called to question. So when asked what the pinnacle of the genre is, one should only need one word instead of three for the message to come across. Black. In June 2007, the PlayStation 3, one generation later than originally planned, received its own version of the original Ninja Gaiden, subtitled Sigma. The name of Sigma can be interpreted in a few ways. By definition, it means the summation of an equation, implying that this game holds all the lessons learned from the previous versions and that they can now be put on display in one final product. This can also be taken to a personal level, as the new director Yosuke Hayashi is at the helm this time, being a former apprentice of Tomonobu Itagaki. All his lessons learned from his master are on display here, or so he might think. So far, Hayashi had mostly worked behind the curtains, his biggest team effort with Itagaki being on the Ninja Gaiden game for the Nintendo DS, Ninja Gaiden Dragon Sword. As a child, he would play video games himself, and he once commented that his favorite moments were the credits. He hoped, and imagined, that one day his name would be among them. When asked about his inspirations, he immediately points out Shigeru Miyamoto, of Nintendo fame. But it's important to note that this is probably in the sense of motivation to pursue the craft, and not inspiration in their vision of the art form. Instead of Miyamoto as his teacher, he had Itagaki watching over him. Relationships between student and master are very complex, especially in the arts. Going back to the art renaissance in Italy, students of the paint would often mix the oils for their masters for over 10 years, and only then, by exception, be allowed to paint one branch or shadow in their tutor's work. It wasn't until the master felt comfortable with the student's skills that he'd set them free, but there would always remain a stern judgment. The student was a reflection of the master. If he performed bad, the master would gain a bad reputation as well. This philosophy extends to the current era, where art academies are known to be one of the more grueling experiences in a student's lifetime, but also the most rewarding. Even after getting their diploma, they'll often feel the urge to prove themselves, even if they've already succeeded in doing so. Ninja Gaiden Sigma is the first time Hayashi was at the helm. Akin to a student in the early Renaissance allowed to paint one leaf in the Sistine Chapel, with his master already at work on a new piece, Ninja Gaiden 2. Hayashi could focus all his attention to the leaf, as instructed, or he could add his own aspirations in his master's work and vision. Letting the Italian metaphors rest for a spell, if Sigma desired to be described with one word, it would be tenka, meaning addition. Supplementing the previous additions, this game adds another weapon, in anticipation of Ninja Gaiden 2, which would originally introduce the weapon. Rachel is also added as a playable character in between certain missions, a buxom blonde sporting an axe with a slower playstyle. New items and save stations were added, and nearly all enemy placements have been retweaked or changed for the sake of variation. In terms of content, Sigma can easily be considered the longest and most content-filled game in the series. As such, if written down in bullet points, Sigma sounds like the perfect iteration of the original Ninja Gaiden. Once Ryu unleashes his new weapons and the blood paints the chapel's walls, this feeling is heightened. The player traverses through familiar, though slightly altered grounds and goes on a rampage. Nothing can stop him. One fiend gets to jump on him, but Ryu repels with a Nimpo, which now requires you to frantically shake the controller to increase its power even further. A minor annoyance, but it does not take away from the game. Once completed, Ryu puts both his katanas away and flies off into the sunset as a silver eagle transformed. Justice and vengeance made real. Holding the game box in his hands, the player will look back on the experience. One will recall that the new weapon's ultimate technique nearly killed a boss in one strike. Probably not the intention of the designers. The player wants to press new game for another go at this marvelous experience. He wishes to feel the thrill of being Ryu once more, but then he recalls the forced Rachel chapters. While he liked them, he felt they interrupted Ryu's tale instead of complementing it, and that her playstyle didn't really bring a unique element as he had hoped. The player puts the game down, and a year later he revisits it. He starts the game on the now highest difficulty setting, but before he can get used to the controls, an enemy spawns and kills him instantly. There is no moment to reacquaint. When he finally reaches the demonic boss Marbus, he suddenly notices that throwing incendiary shurikens no longer hurts him like they did in Ninja Gaiden Black. Did they change that? Going even deeper into the game, he finds that the added enemies in certain fights have also made getting a maximum karma score on certain fights impossible. More and more, the additions show that they were put into the game, but not nearly as well considered as under Itagaki's watchful eye. This isn't to say the additions were fruitless, but sometimes it is better to add one thing and do it exceptionally well than to add 10 things but not examine them closely. Eventually, the player will tire of these minor annoyances and jump into mission mode. Originally introduced in Ninja Gaiden Black, these offer short fights against certain enemies under specific conditions. Being separate from the main game, the designers could experiment with the weapons and skills the player has, and which enemy combinations would appear. If you ever had the fantasy of fighting both against Samurai Lord Doku while dodging the pain of Alma, this is your dojo. Being offered in chunks with all parts of exploration or additions throughout the series being ignored, the game really shines here. There are a few missions in which the player controls Rachel, but unlike the story, the player can skip these. Once all the challenges have been conquered, one final mission awaits. A reimagining of the second Hurricane Pack's Master Ninja Tournament, aptly titled Eternal Legend. A tower to climb with the ultimate honor awaiting at the top. An even greater honor lies in Sigma's downloadable survival challenges that see players tackle a seemingly infinite wave of enemies and bosses with a single weapon of their choosing. These honors can be yours, and you can display them with pride using a few extra costumes. Strangely, the Ninja Gaiden series adds costumes with each iteration, but also removes previous ones. Whereas in the original 2004 release, one could select a purple shinobi outfit from the start, become a fiendish blue version of Ryu, or a ninja from the future wielding a plasma saber. In Black, these were replaced with new costumes from the Hurricane Packs and some extras. Sigma continues this trend by removing even more older ones while adding no new ones. It's a strange design choice as the assets are there, though with Sigma one can be forgiven that it might be some strange copyright issue. Still, it's a noticeable absence of already existing content. Given as a whole, Sigma is Ninja Gaiden Black, streamlined and stuffed with extras. It's the definition of a reiteration that has nothing or sees nothing to improve, and thus just adds new stuff. Going back to the analogy of the student painting for the Sistine Chapel, Hayashi chose not to paint the leaf, but instead inserted his own vision into that of the master. The result is one that can only clash. Though one might wonder what the original artist thought of this, his feelings aren't as harsh as one might think. In the public eye, however, Itagaki has fired a harsh shot at Hayashi, stating, "I'd like to point out really quickly that the playable character Rachel in Ninja Gaiden Sigma was something that was done by a junior member of Team Ninja, and I didn't really have any involvement in Ninja Gaiden Sigma. I think Ninja Gaiden is the story of Ryu Hayabusa and his journey, and, particularly, I didn't think that the Rachel playable aspect in Sigma was done very well. But what is done behind the scenes shows otherwise. In a strange twist, the introduction mission of Sigma had its layout changed somewhat compared to Itagaki's original. A small mountain was removed to make place for a gorgeous view with trees and a waterfall. While being an addition hailing from Sigma, when Ryu revisits this area in Itagaki's Ninja Gaiden 2, it uses the same design as of that in Sigma, instead of that one as used in Itagaki's original. This could be an oversight or smart reuse of high-resolution assets, or the master giving a subtle hand on the shoulder of his former student. While on the surface level his words will always be harsh to keep him sharp and the master's legacy intact, underneath he will always support him. Afterwards, in 2012, Ninja Gaiden Sigma Plus saw the light of day for the PlayStation Vita. Again, perhaps out of passion, Hayashi chose to add more content, adding a few more new costumes and accessories which even change certain stats of the player. These abilities can sometimes stack, and with the powers gained from the armlets and now also the costumes, Ryu can plow through the harder difficulties with ease. Sadly, this once again shows little consideration or thought being put in these additions. They also stack visually, slowly turning Ryu into more of a cartoon character. We started this chapter describing the meaning of the term Sigma. But outside of summation, Sigma also has another meaning. It was used to mark objects that were not well aligned. A harsh statement, but one that feels strangely apt. Sigma is a strong game in and of itself, but when compared to the baseline offered in the previous iterations, it feels like it and its vision are misaligned. At the time of writing, Sigma Plus is the final iteration of the original Ninja Gaiden to be released, though this is no doubt going to change in the future. The original Ninja Gaiden was a hallmark of the series, but also for the genre at large. It defined a template that many would follow and created a community that none could ignore. Though I, the writer and voice that you have been listening to, have remained as objective as possible until this point, I ask for your leniency as I put my own opinion into words. Ninja Gaiden is a game like none other, but also one that has gotten worse over the years. While additions were made, some bad and some good, the charm and balance of the original has not yet been matched. Ever since Itagaki went back on his creation with the Hurricane packs, the game started to deviate from its original concept and, respectfully, never looked back. In the 2004 release, every polygon oozed love from the creators. And this is a feeling sorely missing currently, both of the original's reimaginings, but also of its sequels. It is a series that down the line focused more on quantity than quality. More weapons, more moves, more gore, more playable characters, more locations, more bosses, multiplayer, co-op, a complexer ultimate technique system, and many other new mechanics. But while none of those were ever as well designed as those present in the original, they are still at the top of the genre. A testament to how great Ninja Gaiden is and how grateful we are that we can experience the thrills of being a ninja in such a great way. Domo arigatou gozaimasu, Itagaki-san. Thank you very much, Master Itagaki. While 2004 saw the end of the Master Ninja Tournament, it also saw the rise of Ninja Gaiden's community at large. What differentiated this community from the ones we see today is that they were united by a singular goal: to beat Itagaki and his creation. Like the tournament being Itagaki's platform to search for the ultimate ninja, so too did the community seek to conquer his beast of a game, and they did so together. Most communities are inherently competitive, being defensive or even aggressive towards new members, as they can form a threat to their own success. A new user could be the next champion to kick one off their throne, or the upcoming teammate who has no idea what he's doing. Yet in a single-player experience like the original Ninja Gaiden, the goal was unified, and later extended by karma, challenge, and speedruns. Message boards would run wild looking for ways to get that point counter higher, or to find a way together to consistently hit Alma. This form of a community still exists to this day, but has mostly found its place in speedrunning. Still, Ninja Gaiden has had its fair share of stories surrounding its community. And this final, little extra chapter will give a little peek into that small but important piece of ninja history. You have arrived at the premier site for all things Ninja Gaiden. All the items you will need for your successful NGB mission or story mode run is right here. Videos, help guides, walkthroughs, tributes, and a thriving bulletin board community. For the serious NG player, you have found home. Please use this site responsibly and respect other users during your visit. Thank you in advance. We thank Tecmo and Team Ninja for developing the world's best action game, and hope that the users of this site will support their hard work by doing business with them at Tecmo Online. Original quote from the Iberians website. Iberians' Ninja Gaiden realm is where most of it started. The site belonged to user Iberian Warrior, hence the name, and quickly became a home for all fans Ninja Gaiden. The reason was twofold. First being that it supported a video archive, as YouTube didn't exist until a year later, and didn't catch actual steam within the video game community until early 2006. This meant that if one was looking for tips and tricks on how to perform them, this was the place to be. But it also offered a base of operations, a forum in which the masters at large could discuss tactics and patterns. Each new member was welcomed, and the skill level present ranged from couldn't beat the game on easy to beat the game on the highest setting without even being touched. Experience has shown that more than once that new blood can often find new and interesting things that experts didn't. So the more, the merrier. This, in combination with the common goal, made the Ninja Gaiden community a friendly and mature one. Friendships were forged, blades were sharpened, and victories were gained. When a video was shown of two players who'd met online that were now sitting on one couch playing Ninja Gaiden Black together with a few beers, the feeling was heightened. Was this what Itagaki was secretly striving towards? Sadly, around 2010, Iberian's website started to go offline frequently. Due to personal issues, he was unable to consistently keep the server online. Though prominent members tried to salvage the server or even take over its maintenance and costs, Iberian Warrior decided to keep the site to himself. Whether it was out of love for his own creation or another reason is unclear and not important. Lots of videos were lost, but due to the sporadic downtime of the site, some users had already started backing up some content. Most painful, however, was the loss of the discussion topics, some going into the hundreds of pages of the game's grandmasters discussing new strategies. These will forever linger in the now silent database of Iberian's Ninja Gaiden realm, in the dark. But this was not the end. Friendships had been forged, and people did not falter. Around the time that Iberian's realm started going offline, the Ninja Archives were born, supporting a forum, video archive, and later also a chat room. The site was run by user Dark Hazuki. When Iberians went dark for good, the Ninja Archives became the home for all remaining ninjas, though some still wander devoid of the web, hoping for the glory days of Iberians to return. It wasn't until 2017 that the site transitioned into the hands of community member Joe the Button and gained a new name, NG Realm, a name to reference Iberian's legacy one last time. This form of community was not exclusive to Ninja Gaiden, however. Devil May Cry fans were blessed with the still active Phantom Babies website, a reference to a popular enemy in the game, and God of War fans found shelter in the forming of the Ultimate God of War Union Board. Other smaller communities usually find their home under dedicated forum on GameFAQs, some like the Metal Gear Rising board still being slightly active to this day. If any part of this video on Ninja Gaiden has piqued your curiosity and you want to join the community, give the NG Realms a chance. Other good places are the Ninja Gaiden 2 forums on GameFAQs, which houses many of the same members. Though I consider myself only a very minor member of the community, having joined very late, it is still one I am proud to have been part of, and it brings me great joy every day. May the legacy of the ninja never die. Thank you for watching. I hope you found this video entertaining and informative. Now before I leave, here are some notes that didn't really fit into the article, but I thought were still pretty enjoyable to read nonetheless. Here we go. Interestingly enough, nunchaku is written in a foreign-style katakana, indicating a non-Japanese heritage of the weapon, probably due to its introduction into popular culture thanks to Bruce Lee. The reason for the main weapon being a katana are interesting. Itagaki is a proud owner of his own katana set, which was made for him by his father. And the ninjato sword, used in many ninja fiction, has no official record of them actually existing, making the katana a good choice for a fictional ninja. It was notoriously hard to find actual information on the Ninja Gaiden tournament, as most factual and numerical data is no longer available. Citations of it being the most successful Xbox Live event were omitted from this video as they could not be backed up. While high contenders in the tournament, both Snapdragon and Yasunori Otsuka never became big members of the online Ninja Gaiden community, at least as far as we know. Outside of hearsay and discussions at the time, there is no official recording of the Vanquish tournament taking place, just pictures. Sadly, with the discontinuation of the original Xbox Live, the Hurricane packs are no longer available for download. I find it very hard to be negative towards Ninja Gaiden Black. Black has received a large amount of praise, but its flaws are rarely analyzed or put into the spotlight. The Bast Fiend example in Chapter 3 was taken from my speech at Nerd Night, where I spoke to around 50 strangers about my passion for the action genre. They were a perfect example to show how these games were designed, and the example is still relevant today. We would see what Hayashi's real vision would be with Ninja Gaiden 3. More on that in the future. As a person, Hayashi is hard to track down, being far less prominent in the media compared to Itagaki. His credits are also harder to find, and at times even contradict themselves. Whether he worked on the original Ninja Gaiden in 2004 under Itagaki's wing is still unclear. A quick mention should go to the art design in the Ninja Gaiden series, mixing both Egyptian, American, Japanese, Turkish, and even old Christian designs, and still making it feel like one world. I found it very difficult to mix the examples of Italian art history with those of the Japanese roots that the articles had. I hope it came over correctly. To note, I am a graduate of the High Art Academy in the Netherlands, which is where the inspiration came from. Thankfully, it was impossible to find a screenshot or footage, at least on high resolution, of Ryu donning all of the accessories in Ninja Gaiden Sigma Plus. I don't think I would have survived that. And finally, the history of Iberian's Ninja Gaiden realm is a sensitive subject. For this reason, some facts were omitted. Again, thank you for watching.